Okay, so here we are again, Cricket Strength Friday Fix. This week we're moving on to the hips. Now, for us, we know that our first point of diagnosis is to check pelvic position. We know that has an effect on the lower back, has effect on the lower extremities. So issues that we see around it are just, look guys, predominantly kids, adults, we're just sitting more often than not. And because of that, our skeletons develop positional dysfunctions. So a lot of the obvious ones are that the pelvis rotates a little bit too far forward. We always feel that the hip flexors are really tight. We go and visit the physio. The physio says, oh, if it's tight, you've got to stretch it. But actually, those hip flexors are really doing the job of the core above. They're holding the pelvis up. So if you think if that pelvis rotates forward, everything, our center of mass, just moves further forward. So our hip flexors are always tight and short and engaged. Another byproduct of that is that we lose rotation at the hips. So these are the guys who are going to be missing a bit of internal and external. Also then we lead on to the fact of whether our low back is in a position, so hyperlordotic, that curve that just comes into play. So all caused around the position of the pelvis. Then we've got issues around imbalances left and right. So really guys, the point of this is to start looking at pelvic position and understand that everything in life around sitting and sitting in front of a desk and looking at a computer really puts us in a crappy position. So we're going to get next door, we're going to have a look at some assessments. See you in a minute. Okay guys, so let's talk about how we look at the hip and hip assessments. For today, we're going to leave rotation out of this, but just so we know, we're looking for lying down. In an ideal world, if we're looking at flexion, we're looking to try and get to around about 120 degrees. So 90 degrees, 120. When it comes to having a look at internal, external rotation, internal's always been that big one in rotational athletes, golfers, baseball, definitely when it comes to cricket. And to be honest with you, I'm looking at anything 25, 30 degrees. If you go on the PGA Tour and you look at some of those guys, they're 35, 40 degrees of hip internal rotation. Today's purpose, though, and just looking at pelvic position and how that actually does affect rotation, we're going to look at some three very quick, very simple tests. The first one I want you to do is just a simple straight leg toe touch. Feet together, don't bend the legs, bend down, see if you can get to your toes and hold there comfortably. That's number one. Number two is go into a sit and reach, legs straight out. Can you touch your toes? And then number three, the final one we're going to have a look at is a standard, gold standard leg raise. So lying flat down, keeping your leg dead straight, raise it under control. Now we're looking to try and be able to raise the leg up to 70 degrees. I've got to be honest with you, I kind of, in a lot of the athletes I see, want to see about 80 to 90 degrees. But if you can get to 70, then at least that gives us a reasonable understanding of range. Now, pelvic position will affect how high you can lift that leg. That's why in the correctives, to be honest with you, just taking a pelvis that's rotated forward and bringing it back gives us better range of motion at the hips, so flexion and extension, but also because the joint is back in a better position, it allows us to rotate a little bit more. So just reorientating that pelvis allows us to be able to achieve better rotation, better flexion, better extension, and that's what we're going to do in a minute. Okay, so we're going to give you, throughout this series, some of the best correctives. And when I say the best correctives, they're pulled from different camps. So you've got the functional movement systems camp, you've got the postural restoration, you've got DNS, you have got the FRC, functional range conditioning. We've kind of pulled some of the best correctives that give you the biggest effect and quickly. Now, bearing in mind a lot of guys do have that pelvis rotated forward, and they also then have those hip flexors that constantly feel tight and engaged. We're going to do a very easy, straightforward drill that just allows the hip flexors to disengage. So what we need is a bench or a flat surface. We need a ball or a foam roller, something to put between the legs. Now, for this one, first thing you're going to do is put the heels up, legs apart, take the roller or whatever, the ball, pop it between your knees and just put 10 out of 10 pressure, but let's get 7 or 8 on that. Now, from here, Make sure the back is nice and flat and just tilt the pelvis back on itself so basically you can't fit your hands underneath. Now from here, then we're going to come up, take your tailbone off the floor, about 3 or 4 inches. Extend one leg out straight. Now, with the opposite arm, we're going to be taking a big inhale through the nose, and on the exhale, I'm going to reach for the foot while maintaining pressure here. So it's going to be in and then reach. Cycle of breath, in, reach. One more. And then we're going to change over legs. Okay guys, so on to the second corrective now. To be honest with you, this for me, so when we see 16, 17-year-old kids come in and they're trying to get into an S&C style training program, one of the biggest movement patterns that is a real struggle to reprogram is a hip hinge. Again, because of the amount of time that these kids have been sitting, growth spurts, and a number of other reasons. So this particular corrective is one of my favourites. It will repattern a hip hinge within a couple of minutes. Now, if you do this on a daily basis, a couple of times a day, you'll find you won't need to do the corrective afterwards. Remember, correctives aren't about doing drills for life. They're about correcting something and moving on. So trying to find the minimal effective dose so that people can start to move more efficiently. So for this one, favourite half foam roller, again, you can get them on Amazon for £5. If you haven't got one at home, just get some books or just a step that's about 6 inches off the ground. So for this one, showing you guys from sideways on, first thing we're going to do is going to put our toes up and our arms straight up above our head. It will take a minute or so just to get a sensation of good balance. Now, it's very important that you sync your breath here. We take an inhale when we come up and an exhale on the way down. So from here, big inhale, nice and tall, exhale, go down, down, breathe out, breathe out. If you can't touch your toes, it doesn't matter, just bend your knees, touch your toes, even with a bit of knee bend, and then on the inhale, come up. Really important you go as high as you can towards the sky. So we're also dealing at the top of the movement with this thoracic kyphosis, this rounding of the upper back. So we're trying to reprogram that on a level pelvis. So again, exhale, start with the neck. So the neck goes down, look 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 down. If you can touch, great. If not, bend. And then on the inhale, come back up. 4 breaths with the toes up, and then we go the other way around. Heels up, exactly the same. Take a big deep breath, and on the exhale, we go down, down, down with the neck tucked. Bend if you have to. Then on the inhale, we come back up. Cycle 4 breaths on each side, and then recheck some of those toe touches. Have a look, recheck and see whether you can sit and get into a better position and access the hip. Or for guys who are really rotated forward, often they'll say when they stand up, they feel like they're leaning back. So always test before, do some corrective work, test after. Movement should be able to be fixed that quickly. See you next Friday.